Integrated Math 3, this is the answers video for lesson 4.02. That was given to period 3 on Thursday, November the 5th, and will be given to period 1 on Friday, November the 6th. So that'll be tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead. It's a short assignment. It's for everybody. It's due on Monday or Tuesday. Due on Monday or Tuesday. It says Monday. Tuesday's fine. All right. So we went over all these principles. This will always be, this cover page will be on the front of every assignment as long as we're in this unit, which is logarithms and exponentials. So I won't go over this again. We talked about that in these answers to 4.01. If you want to see this discussion of this and what's down here, go back to that video. All right, so we're going to get going. So 1.01, and it says simplify. Your answer should contain only positive exponents. Depending on what you're doing, you have positive or negative, but generally you want to end with positive exponents. Okay, so a couple principles to remember. We'll go back here. Anything raised to the 0 power gives you 1, except 0. So what we see here is we have everything that's parentheses is raised to the 0 power. So as long as y does not equal 0, because that would make this entire parenthesis go to 0, then this is going to be 1. Everything inside of this raised to the 0 power is 1, as long as y doesn't equal 0. So that's one of the conditions, if you really want to be formal about this, is that y cannot equal 0. All right, so what we have then is negative x to the negative 4th, y to the 5th, and then this becomes 1, so you don't even have to write it. If you want, you can write times 1 if you want, but ultimately you don't need to write it. Okay, now we need to, it's x to the negative 4th. So what happens? How do you get rid of that negative sign? You take the reciprocal. You put this down on the bottom. If you only have one level like this, there's no top and bottom, that means everything's on the top. It's in the numerator. In other words, you can think of it as being over 1, like that. Okay, so now we're going to take this and put it down on the bottom. So we're going to come over here and we're going to write y to the 5th, that stays on top, over x to the 4th. And we don't need to write that times 1 anymore. And there's a negative sign there. It doesn't matter. You put it top or bottom or right here. You can put it right there. Okay, so it's negative y to the 5th over x to the 4th. That's your answer. And your only condition is that y cannot equal 0. And also x cannot equal 0. Let's go ahead and put that condition in too. Why is that? Because now it's in the denominator. And it cannot be 0. If 0 to the 4th would be 0, that would be illegal as well. Okay? All right. Let's go and do 1b, and then you'll do 1c by yourself. I'm going to leave that one for you to do by yourself. There was a typo, this equal sign here, that shouldn't be there. It just kind of got thrown on there. So just kind of scratch it out. Okay? Okay, one way you can approach this is you can take all the negatives and flip them. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One thing you can also do is realize that this in parentheses, since there's nothing outside of the parentheses or no coefficient in front of it, you can get rid of the parentheses. They don't mean anything. Okay, in this case, again, since there's no exponent up here to distribute through to all this, or no coefficient out in front here to distribute to all this, you don't even need those parentheses. They don't mean anything. The other thing you can do is just simplify all the like terms where they are and then flip them at the end if they're negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we have x to the minus 3, x to the minus 1. That's going to be x to the negative 3 plus negative 1. So that's going to be x to the negative 4. And then we have y. We only have one y on the top, so that's going to be y to the 4th. And then we have z to the negative 6 times z to the negative, to the positive 2, so that's going to be negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Now we'll go down to the bottom and do the same thing. We only have one x, we only have one y, we only have one z, we only have one w, so that all stays the same. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything with a negative sign and flip it. So if it's x to the minus 4th, it comes up to the top and becomes x to the positive 4th. If this on the top is x to the negative 4th, it goes down to the bottom and becomes x to the positive 4th. Okay? So we're going to get all the exponents to be positive. Alright, so we're going to take this one and bring it down to the bottom. I'm going to do all this in one big shot here. The y stays up on top, and the z to the negative fourth comes down to the bottom. And by the way, when I move that down there, I should have changed it to a positive fourth. Sorry. I moved that down to the bottom there. So let me just change that. You don't need the plus sign there. Z to the x to the fourth. Okay, again, y to the fourth stays on top. Z to the negative 4 goes on the bottom, and that becomes z to the fourth, becomes positive. So we've taken care of everything up here. Now down here, x to the negative fourth goes up to the top and becomes x to the fourth. You just flip it. If it's on the bottom, it goes on the top. If it's on the top, it goes on the bottom. And it becomes positive. Y to the negative 3 comes up here and becomes y to the third. Okay. Z to the fourth stays on the bottom here. So we have a z to the fourth. That was this one that came down. Now this one just stays on the bottom because it's already positive. So I'm going to put another z to the fourth there. Remember, these are all multiplications between these. And finally, w to the third is positive, so it stays on the bottom. Okay? Now we can start multiplying things, putting things together on the top and bottom. So y to the fourth times y to the third is y to the seventh. And there's no y's on the bottom. I'm going to move over here. I'm kind of working backwards here. So on the top I have y to the seventh. Again, y to the fourth, y to the third is y to the seventh. I have x to the fourth, and I have x to the fourth on the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel both of those. They're gone. Okay, and now I have z to the fourth, z to the fourth. That's, you're going to add those two together. So 4 plus 4 is 8, and that's on the bottom. Okay, and then I have the w to the third that's on the bottom. And that's the final answer. There's nothing else we can simplify. Okay? All right. You're going to do this one by yourself, all right? Very similar. Remember, this has to be distributed through to this and to this, okay? That's the only thing that make that a little bit tricky there. All right. Okay, we're going to do 2a here. We're going to write a exponential function for these data points. And that's how functions, by the way, how math equations are derived, is by taking data points from the real world. When we're talking about science, you take data points from the real world, you just measure things, and then you derive an equation from those data points. That's how you get equations in the first place. So that's what we're doing here. Let's just say we did some kind of scientific experiment and came up with what we put in this, we took out this, okay? So what we're going to do is, so you need to know, though, the form of the equation. The form of the equation for an exponential is some coefficient a, b to the x, put that in parentheses. You don't have to, but I do it so that you don't forget and multiply ab before you do the x. You always do the b to the x first and then multiply by a. So this is an exponential because the variable is in the exponent. So you're going to put in some value of x there and come with some value of y here. And so the rule for this is choose the two you want to choose to start with to figure out what you're trying to figure out what a and b is in this equation. So you're going to have some number here raised to the x power equals y. So you can put in any value of x you want in and come out with some value of y because you know a and b. So you want to choose 0 and 1 to try to figure out what a and b are. Why? Because we know that anything raised to the 0 power gives us 1. Okay, so if we raise this function to the 0 power, if I raise b to the 0 power, I know that this inside the parentheses is going to be 1. That'll help me to figure out what a is. Then once we know what a is, the next one you want to choose is 1. Because we know what a is, and we know that b raised to the 1 power is just going to be b, that'll give us some number. In this case, it'll give us 1. Okay, so let me go ahead and just do it and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so first we're going to start with the 0. So it's a times b to the 0 power equals, so when a is 0, that means when x is 0, that means that y is going to be 1/5. Okay. Well, we know that b to the 0 power is equal to 1. We're assuming that it's not 0, okay? So we'll just write that as our condition. b does not equal 0. It can't equal 0, otherwise that's undefined. But we're saying it's some other number. So that means that this is going to be a times b to the 0 is 1 equals 1/5. Well, a times 1 equals 1/5 means a has to equal 1/5. Okay, so we figured out what a is. Now let's plug a back in here and pick a different number, this time 1, and let's figure out what b is. So we write 1/5, that's our value of a, times b to the first power. So the value we're going to choose for the independent variable for x is going to be 1. And if we do that, that's going to give us 1. Okay. All right. So 1/5 times b to the first. Well, b to the first equals just b, right? That's rule number 1. Anything raised to the first power equals itself, okay? So what we have is 1/5 b equals 1. And so what we can simply do is multiply top of both sides by 5. Okay, and 5 cancels with 5, so all we have left is b. So b equals 5. Okay, so let me draw a line here. So that means our final equation is going to be a equals 1/5 and b equals 5. So it's going to be 1/5 times 5 to the x power equals y. So now you can test. You don't even need to have an answer key. You can just check your own work. Let's see if it works. If we put 2 in for x, we should get 5. Let's see. 5, and there's a 2 there, so 5 squared is 25, and 1/5 times 25 equals 5. So yes, 2 leads to 5. How about 3? 5 to the third is 5 times 5 times 5. That equals 125. If you multiply that by 1/5, you get 25. So when x is 3, y should be 25, and we see that it is. Okay, so this is our final answer. That's the equation that we were looking for. All right, move on. I'll do one more of these with you. See if you can do it. The key, though, is to learning is see if you can do it by yourself. And then watch the video, okay? So pause the video right now. Try to do it by yourself. Just remember, the numbers you want to pick, you want to start with this equation, this general equation. And you want to find what a and b are. And the numbers you want to start with are 0 and 1. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, try that, and then turn it on, and I will show you the answers. Okay, so we're going to choose 0 and 1. First 0 and then 1. Okay, so when x equals 0, this equals 0, y is going to equal 27. So we're going to write a times b to the 0 power equals 27. When this equals 0, this equals 27. All right, so we know b to the 1 equals 1. So a times 1 equals 27. That means that a equals 27. Okay, now we're going to go back and we'll put that back into that part of the equation. If a equals 27 times b, now we're going to choose the number 1. So times b to the first power equals what? What's that going to equal? That's going to equal 9. When you put a 1 in for x, you're going to get a 9 for y. Equals 9. So 27 times b, b to the first is b, equals 9. Divide both sides by 27. Cancels here, and that means that b equals 9 divided by 27 is 1/3. If you want to leave it as a fraction, just reduce this down to 1/3. 9 goes into 27 3 times. Okay, so we have b, we have a, so now we can write the equation 27 times 1/3 to the x power equals y. And that's our final answer. That's really the final answer. Okay, so we have the a there, the b there. Let's test it out on a couple of values. We derived it using 0 and 1, so you don't want to use those. 2. So 1/3 to the second power. What that means is, let's come over here and see what that means. It means 1/3 to the second power. Whoops. Move it a little further. There we go. 1/3 to the second power means 1 to the second power, which is 1, and 3 to the second power. So it's kind of like you're distributing it to both of these. That's 9. So 1/3 to the second power is 9. So 1/3 to the second power gives us 9. Gives us 1/9. So 1/9. So there. So 1/9. 1/9 times 27 equals 3. If you multiply 27/9 equals 3. And that y, so there you go. 2 is 3. How about 3? That would be 1 to the third is 1, and 3 to the third is 27. So it's 1/27. So 27 times 1/27, the 27s cancel, you get 1. So when you put a 3 in here, you get a 1 out there. Okay? All right, and that does it. 3C is done exactly the same way. Choose 0 and 1. There's the general form of the equation that you have to fill out, and that's that. Okay, that takes care of lesson 4.02, and we will see some of you on Friday, and some of you will see in class. Get this done by Monday. If you're in period 1, get it done by Tuesday if you're in period 2. All right? You have a good day.